Okay, we'll go ahead and get started tonight. It's a repeat of your message, basically. So the lessons on the risen Christ, of course, this last Sunday was Easter, and starts out in Matthew 27 and 57. Let me get up so I can read it. We'll wait till Jackie and June get plugged in.
We're here.
All right, good.
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
All right, whoop-de-doo.
We're starting in 27 and 57. I have to whoop me a cat here in a minute. It says, when the evening was come, there was a rich man of Arimathea named Joseph, who also himself was Jesus's disciple. He went to Pilate and begged the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body be delivered. And when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in clean linen cloth and laid it in his own tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the door of the sepulchre and departed. And there was Mary Magdalene and the other Mary sitting over against the sepulchre. Now the next day that followed, the day of the preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees came together unto Pilate, saying, Sir, we remember that the deceiver said while he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise again. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure until the third day, lest his disciples come by night, steal him away, and say unto the people, He is risen from the dead. So the last error shall be worse than the first. Pilate said unto him, Ye have a watch, go your way, or you have a guard, make it as sure as you can. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone and setting a watch. Starting off with Joseph, he was actually one of the Sanhedrin. He was one of the ones of the ruling class. You want to kind of say it's not really the same, but maybe the Supreme Court in our case, that maybe they want to, make the rules or do whatever. And so he was one of those. We also know that Nicodemus is also one, and he was also a follower of Christ. We see that in, I believe it's Mark or Mark or John tells us that. But typically, what would happen, they would leave, and this is Golgotha is, we know, on a hill, and it's going as you're going up into Jerusalem. Is what I've read about. So a lot of people would see this as they were coming up the track, and they would see these people, and they would know that they were criminals. They had been, and it said typically for Romans, they would leave the bodies of the criminals on their crosses to rot or be eaten by wild animals. But since the Jews, since it's there in Judah and in, the land, the Jews didn't want that. They had laws that said that they needed to get them buried as quickly, basically, as they can, and not to display that. And so that because of that, they went ahead, Pilate allowed Joseph to go ahead and get the body of Jesus. Evidently, at that time, Pilate already knew that Jesus was dead, or he may have questioned it, and the guards that was with Joseph maybe have told him. But we know that this was, they knew the case that Jesus was dead. Now, one of the things I've read in here, I was reading some commentary on it, I didn't even know. It's called the swoon theory. Like somebody swoons and kind of faints. Says swoon theory denies the resurrection, saying that Jesus never really died, but just swooned on the cross and then somehow wonderfully revived in the tomb. There's a little letter to a Christian magazine that evaluated this swoon theory. Preacher said on Easter that Jesus swooned on the cross and the disciples nursed him back to health. What do you think? Sincerely bewildered. Dear bewildered, beat your preacher with a cat o' nine tails with 39 heavy strokes, nail him to a cross, hang him in the sun for 6 hours, run a spear through his heart, embalm him, put him in an airless tomb for 36 hours, and see what happens. Yeah, there's no swooning going on there. You're gone. So, but we do have to understand people are trying to explain this. It's impossible. Okay. Another thing that we'll talk a little bit about is that Jesus, there had been previously at least two that we know of. People came back to life. Lazarus being one of them. Jesus raised him from the dead. But that it talks about is a resuscitation. Okay, he came back into his living body, and then he died later on. And we also know in the Old Testament, the little boy that Elijah raised, he died, and he went on and then later on, of course, he died. And then Jesus raised the little girl, Dorcas, I believe they call her, and from the dead. But Jesus came back. He was not resuscitated. He was resurrected. There's a difference because he had a new body. He didn't have his old, he had the physical body so people understood who he was, could see him. But we see even in that, Mary didn't see him at first, didn't recognize him at first. But we see later on that he had the holes in his hands, he had scars, he had all the things, but yet people knew him who he was. So that's a thing that to point out here, that Jesus started this resurrection off, and because of that, he is the first of the resurrection. Hopefully, all of us will be resurrected with him when our time comes. The next thing it talks about is Joseph was a wealthy man because he had not only this, but because he had already provided for himself a tomb, and it was a new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock. And that doesn't mean that he actually did it, but he had it done. So they found a crack in the rock out there in one of the tombs or one of the sides of the face. And there's a bunch of them out there, is what I've been told. And so they would dig out this, and it'd be not a big room, but someplace to put it. And they would actually carve out into the stone, possibly on each side or several sides, making shelves, if you want to say it that way. And that's where they'd put people, especially if it's your family. They would, roll the stone back and then put a new person in there that they had just died. And then after a while, after a couple years, they say that they will roll that back and take the bones that's left, because everything else is dissolved, disintegrated, and put them in a box. They call it an ossuary. And they would still leave that in the tomb. Okay. So we see that because of this being a new tomb, there wasn't any of that there. It was brand new. He had it done. We don't know how long, but he wanted Christ to have this new tomb. It's important to know that it was a new tomb, because it says where no remains had been previously laid. Thus, if he came forth, he would be no suspicion that another had arisen, nor could be imagined that he rose through touching some old prophet's bones, as he did who was laid in Elisha's grave. That's from Spurgeon. So that's an important part, that because it was a new grave, that, he was laid in there. And after he came out, there was only one person in there, and they saw him go in, and now there's nobody there. So it couldn't be that somebody else came out, if there was more than one person there. So we see that uh, that's an important part. Also, it also says, come and see the niche or the cave in which he was laid. Now it is empty. And this is in John. Nor was there any other body in the place, for the tomb was a new one in which no man had ever been laid. So there could be no deception in this case. It's apparently clear that that he rose from the dead. He was there when they put him in, and then 3 days later he wasn't there. And what is unique about this that you may not have thought about, he did this for them, because he didn't have to have the grave rolled back to get out. As it talks about a little later, the stone was rolled back, and we see in the other commentaries that the angel rolled the stone back in that time when he was raised. And because of that, they saw that there wasn't anything in there. Of course, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but they lapsed into unconsciousness when they saw the angel and then saw the stone rolled back. But they could see that there wasn't anything there either. Jesus actually went out of the grave, dematerialized, if you want to say that way, and rematerialized, just like he did when he occurred, came back and came into the room where them. It said he appeared. Okay, he didn't open the door and come through. He came through the door, or he came through the wall, whatever it was. So, okay. One question that I always wonder about, verse 61 says, talks about Mary and them as they's coming back. We haven't got there yet, but Mary Magdalene and Mary, the other Mary, was sitting over against the sepulcher when they rolled it closed. So they were the last ones there that saw it close. And then they were the next ones to come back to see it, other than the guards. Okay. And I want to show you something real quick. It's not really part of this lesson, but it is. This is something that kind of shows the time. They went back and done some research so they can, during the time they have Passover, they have the weekly Sabbath is on a Saturday, what we call Saturday. What actually starts Friday night. Okay. Friday night to Saturday evening, that's the Sabbath across there. Well, at this particular time, Passover was happening here. Okay, that was Wednesday. Then they had the Feast of Unleavened Bread. This was a special Sabbath. It didn't fall particularly on a certain day. It was a certain time. Okay, it's like our Christmas. It's always on the 25th. Sometimes it's on a Tuesday, sometimes on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, any other day. So this special feast, so you actually had two Sabbaths right in a row, this Sabbath and this Sabbath. And from what they said, this is what gets people confused, because they think he died on Friday. But this is saying, no, he didn't. The Passover happened. They come and got him this night. Jesus was on the cross Thursday morning by 9:00. Okay. And about 6 hours later, he was dead. So Joseph went and got his body and put him in the grave before sundown. They had to do this because it was coming up as a Sabbath. They couldn't do any work on the Sabbath. So they had to get him in the grave and the door closed before that. So this is called day one, even though it was not what we consider a full 24-hour day. This is day one, and this is night one when it starts here. So you see, as you go through the progression, here's 3 days, and here's 3 nights that he was in the grave, and then Sunday morning when he came back, he was resurrected. So I don't know if you may be confused about that or whatever, but that, to me, that explains it a little bit more of why, A lot of people think, well, he died on Friday. Well, it didn't really say that. So it said a Sabbath, and people assumed it was on a Friday. Okay, so then on the last verse it said, Pilate told him, go, you've got your own guards, make it as sure as you can. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone with setting a watch. So what they did is they took a piece of rope or a cloth of some sort and put a wax seal on one side of the wall and then a wax seal on the stone itself with that rope going across it. Right now, up at our work, as people are leaving, because the office is closing, and when they leave, they go do a thorough clean of it because of the virus and everything. And they close the door, and then they put a piece of yellow tape across the door and across the jamb and across the wall. So if you go back into it, it breaks that seal, and they know somebody's been in there, and they lock it too if there's locks on it. So it's much the same way. It lets them know that that's somebody's been in there. So, and this was a Roman seal, both of the seals on each side. So if you break that seal, there's a great penalty with that. Because of the Roman Empire, you're breaking their law, and they could go and do whatever they wanted to with that. The procurator at that particular time, Pilate, they could hang you or do whatever, beat you or whatever to do that they had to do to take care of that. So that way they sealed it. The people saw it, the ladies saw it, both Marys saw it there, and whoever was around there. Okay, in verse 28, we start the next part of this chapter, or next part of this lesson. It says that in the end of the Sabbath, so that's as the day grows on, as it began to dawn, toward the first day of the week came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. I guess my question is, they were the last to see Jesus in the grave, and they were the first to see him after he came out and see the grave. Why do you think Jesus, I know there's a plan, but I don't know why. Why do you think Jesus had the women do it and not the apostles? I don't know. It's a question. Think about it. But
I've heard something about that before, because he used somebody lowly, but the men really didn't believe him until they went and saw it themselves.
They didn't. and even, of course, we know Thomas didn't see it until he put his hand into his side.
Right.
Well, it says they went back and they saw the other Mary to the sepulchre and said, behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. I'd never really seen that either. The angel just sat there on top of the stone. It's like this was holding them back, holding the people from not seeing Jesus. Now it's opened. He's done his job. Now he's just resting. That's all he's doing. It's kind of neat to see, the angel. And of course, the guards, when they sent it, and it'll see here in the next verse, that they said they shook so hard they became as dead men. And it describes the angel, says his countenance was like lightning and his raiment white as snow. What do we read about almost every time that somebody sees an angel? What's the first thing the angel says? Fear not. Because it is a scary looking dude or dudette or whatever they are. So, but they are some awesome creatures. We see that in John too. The four living creatures that we call seraphim, cherubim, those things. The way John describes it, they're pretty wicked looking beasts. And so if you see these, I'm sure you're going to be scared. And these guys, tough Roman guards that had seen it all, soldiers, they just fell over. They just fell, as dead men, it said.
Does that mean they passed out?
Yeah, that's what they interpret that to mean, that they passed out, that they became so, for one or two things. One, let's see, it says here, Spurgeon says, he does not appear to have drawn a flaming sword, even though we know that they have those, nor even to have spoken to the keepers, but the presence of perfect purity overawed these rough legionnaires. Just the glory just wiped them out. Just totally wiped them out. Now they recovered, I'm sure. It doesn't say they did, but I think they recovered. And we see a little bit later on, they gave them money to shut up and say that what they saw wasn't what they saw, and the disciples came and stole the body. But the women and the disciples that came afterwards proved that beyond a shadow of doubt that that's not what happened. So verse 5 talks to the women then. He doesn't talk to the people. He says, and the angel answered and said unto the women, fear not. See, there's the words. For I know that ye seek Jesus, which was crucified. He's not here. He is risen. He said, come see the place where the Lord lay. And it's where he had laid. Then it says, go quickly and tell his disciples, he's risen from the dead. And behold, he goeth before you into Galilee. There shall ye see him. Lo, I have told you. So they departed quickly from the sepulchre with fear and great joy, and did run back to the disciples to bring them word. And as they went to tell his disciples, behold, Jesus met them, saying, all hail. They came and held him by the feet, worshipped him. And Jesus said unto them, be not afraid. Go tell my brethren that they go into Galilee, and there shall they see me. Now, the commentary on this too, most of the time when people greet each other in the ancient times in Israel, and even now, shalom, it's hello and goodbye, and it's peace be with you. But here, Jesus doesn't say that. It says all hail. And I've read a couple commentaries on it, and some of them's like, hey, how you been? Been gone haven't seen you in a while. It's kind of like what we would say now. And it's more of a familiar phrase than anything else, telling them, reassuring them that it's him, that it's back. And he goes ahead where the angels don't allow worship. Here, Jesus does. He allowed them, held them, they came and held his feet and worshiped him. So we know that this is representing Jesus at the particular time. Then here again, he tells them again, don't be afraid. Go tell my brethren that they go into Galilee, and there shall they see me. So the ladies they go on ahead and tell them, go on to Galilee, and they'll see him. So we skip down to verse 16. It says, then the 11 disciples went into Galilee, into a mountain where Jesus had appointed them. And when they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. Here again, Matthew may have been there, or Thomas, may have been there, and some of the others too. And Jesus came, and it may have not been just them. It may have been some of the people. We don't know, because there were other people that were following. Once this started and people heard that Jesus was alive, I'm sure there was a crowd gathering. And one commentary said this may be where, Paul said in, I think it's in 1 Corinthians, where it talks about where up to 500 people saw him at one time. They said this may have been the time when they were there in Galilee, because Galilee was where he's from. He was from Nazareth, but his ministry was right around Galilee for the 3 years, between Galilee and Jerusalem, back and forth. And he was there in Galilee. That's kind of where he taught the Ten Commandments, the Beatitudes, and the different sayings that he had there. So it says, and Jesus came and spake unto them, saying, all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Go ye therefore, teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I've commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the world. Amen. One of the most powerful things that he said is this last part of 18. All, not some, but all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. That's saying he's God. I mean, it's everything. And at this particular time, one thing that I saw that I hadn't really thought about, he was God, and then he became man God, man, but in God form, or God in man form while he was here on earth. And then he returned to his heavenly Father, and he's God, but he's in that man form that we know about, that we can realize and understand. So he's saying here, all power is given unto me. What did he say right after that? Go ye therefore. He's telling them the power that he's been given. He's telling them, he taught them before. He taught them, go do this and do this and do this when you go. Now he's telling them again, not just to Jerusalem, but to all nations. And at this particular time, they hadn't even really known what the Holy Ghost was, because it didn't happen for another 40 days. So, and this is, of course, where we get our great missionary call, our great calling. Everybody's calling. It's not just missionaries, but go to our neighbors, go to our country, wherever. Let's go to the world, basically. Any questions or any comments or? Okay.
Go ahead. You have a question? No.
Okay.
Should it be Good Thursday?
Yeah, he said, well, so it should be Good Thursday instead of Good Friday.
Yeah, maybe.
And I said, ooh, we should get Thursday and Friday off.
I don't think that's going to pass.
You're right.
I did see Brother Epperson mentioned that Sunday that, I don't know why it's called Good Friday. I'm going to have to find that as a BC cartoon. And one of them, Peter, or I can't remember what the other guy's name is, was asking him, the cynic, well, why do they call it Good Friday? And I don't remember the words, but he said, well, isn't it that took place after that? It's not in his words, but he said, after that's when he gave his life for us. Don't you think that's pretty good? He said, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Is it true that where Jesus was crucified, that Adam was buried beneath him at the cross? I just heard that.
Yeah.
Rick Renner,
Uh-huh.
he was saying something like that this week. Well, sometime this week.
It's kind of hard to imagine that. I mean, maybe it could, but the way.
How did Adam get all the way down there?
Well, that's my point. I'm not sure that supposedly Adam was over closer to like Babylon. That's kind of where they think the Garden of Eden was, somewhere over there. We don't know how far. And I just don't understand that particular concept. That strikes me as not being true, but.
Yeah. I mean, how old was Adam when he died?
950 something, I think it was.
Yeah,
950 years.
956.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, he had plenty of time to get there.
It could have migrated over there. Yeah, that's right. It could have. But my point, I mean, I think you go over there now, they can point you to about 3 different places or more where they say Jesus was buried. So they don't really actually know where Jesus was buried. It's what I've read.
Because he was gone.
Yeah, he was gone, and I'm sure after he was gone, the people used his grave for something else.
I mean, it's pretty much irrelevant where
Yeah.
he was buried.
Well, people want to make a shrine of it, is what it is.
Right.
So it's just like the Mary, where Mary was born, and all the different things that they have where Jesus was born. We don't know that for sure, but they've got it documented all over. If you go to Israel or Jerusalem, supposedly all the sightseeing places will show you, where they were, and some of it's true. I mean, we know that they'll take you down Jerusalem and say, okay, this is where Jesus walked on. Well, that's true, but it's like 30 feet down because
Yeah.
it's been, now there are some parts that's still, okay, is what I understand, as far as it may still be the same stones. But for the most part, that city's been damaged, rebuilt, damaged, and rebuilt.
At least look how things change in our short lifetime. I mean, some of the places that we used to go to doesn't exist anymore, and in just a matter of less than 100 years, to add 1900 more years to that or more. So
Oh yeah,
World Trade Center.
exactly. Yeah.
I remember the Pence family. Brother Wayne Pence passed away today,
Oh.
and